alcohol was not my problem.
Yeah.
Alcohol was my solution. I didn't think I was worth anything, and so I didn't think they'd actually want me there.
Holy water, filling up my bruised mind, spilling up my red lines. It should have been the last time. Should have been the last time.
And that's how I live my life.
All your torches will tear up my two heads, pulling up my two reds. It hurts to be the last friend.
You end up finding that, like, all these things that you're afraid of, like, it's just afraid because you haven't done them yet.
Red, violet, blue, I fell under you, and it should have been the last time. It should have been the last time. Red, violet, blue, I felt you sink on through, and it should have been the last time. It should have been the last time.
And all of a sudden, the darkness isn't so scary.
Yeah.
There's light out there, man.
Holy water, filling up your top floor. All you wanted was the love.
Welcome to the RePurposed Podcast. Thank you for joining us again. I'm here with Cody.
How's it going?
This is Cody, a.k.a. Joe Santagato, exact replica. I already know the thumbnail for YouTube I'm going to use, and it's Joe Santagato, and then a picture of you right beside it, and it's just going to be like, who's who?
He's immediately going to send a cease and desist.
Yeah, or he's going to be like, I need to meet this guy because he actually looks exactly like me and sounds like me, or he's just going to be like, this is AI. This isn't even real. Yeah. Like, he's not going to know. But yeah, dude, thank you for taking the time to come and share your story and do this. I'm super pumped.
Of course.
I think it's,
for you.
I appreciate it, honestly, because I think it's going to be really cool to hear the side of you, knowing that, you know, when you were still kind of going through the motions of addiction, you know, we were working together.
Yeah. Yeah, we spent a lot of time behind a bar together.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, you got to see me at about as close to my worst as it was. There was a lot of stuff that I still, like, projected in front of me to try and predict. But I mean, like, anything from, like, dude, I would forget stuff all the time. There was things I just straight up wouldn't do because I was too drunk to do them the night before. And you'd wake up and be like, I have to set up this whole bar. Like, and it just, and it was actually part of the amends that I made was actually coming to you and apologizing for not doing all of those things that I needed to do when we were working together, man. Yeah. So it's kind of a full circle that I get to now come and tell the story. You can hear the side of things.
Yeah, 100%, dude. Yeah, no, it's because I know that, like, I know you were going through it and stuff. And, like, at that point, I wasn't really, I think I was in a much more healthy state then. So for me, it was, like, almost frustrating. And I was like, yo, this guy needs to get his shit together because I am, like, I felt like I was like, dude, I'm like, pulling this bar together. Oh, myself.
you didn't just feel like it, man. You were keeping it together.
Yeah, fair enough. But you know what's so crazy to me is, like, that's how I felt when I was working with you for most of the part. Yeah. And then in the last, like, 6 months of working at that bar, I felt like it was switched. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to name anyone, but, like, the other bartender that I work with, I felt like he was just picking up the slack right, left, and center for me because I was just being a piece of shit, basically. Yeah. And just not being a good human. So, yeah.
It's selfish and self-centered, man. Like that's when you're in the throes of like addiction and you're so focused on you, you wake up, you're focused on like, God, I feel terrible today and I feel awful. And like your whole mindset is centered around like, how am I just going to survive this day? Yeah. And you're not focused on like, what can I give other people? Your cup is so empty that you're like, I need that extra 5 minutes. Don't they just understand that I'm feeling terrible? I can't do this because I'm feeling awful. I need to get out of here because I'm feeling awful. So you just don't give anything because you have nothing left to give.
That's so sad, dude. Honestly.
Well, that's how I felt, man.
Yeah.
That's how I felt every day that I was behind the bar.
Yeah.
You know, like, and especially at the end there, man, because it was such a rough experience, but that it didn't get worse. My internal dialogue didn't get worse. It was my coping mechanism stopped working.
Okay.
Alcohol was not my problem.
Yeah.
Alcohol was my solution.
Yeah. Yeah.
My problems were all internal. I was selfish and self-centered from the get-go. Yeah. I felt uncomfortable from the get-go. Yeah. So to give you a little bit of background.
Definitely.
When I was born into like a really like kind of well-to-do family. Both my parents were incredible. Yeah. Very thoughtful people, very like strong moral compass, give you the shirt off their back type of people. Yeah. And in the family unit, I always felt uncomfortable. Okay. It was nothing to do with them. They were incredible.
You just felt like a black sheep kind of thing?
Because like it's from like my perspective, it was almost like there was this like altruistic thing that like my whole family had going on in this synergy that I just felt other than, and it was nothing to do with them. They kept trying to bring me into it and make me feel comfortable. And it just, whatever that was in me felt uncomfortable. And what I ended up figuring out later on is like my fear is what drove every decision through my childhood and into my teen years and into my adult years. I was afraid of what other people thought of me. I was afraid of the lies that I told and was going to be found out, right? So if I lied that like, oh no, I didn't take that chocolate bar, I was afraid of that. Yeah. I was afraid of what everybody and everything thought of me. So I would lie to them to change the story and change my perception of myself, right? So, you know, if I was, you know, talking to my parents and I was telling them about my day, you know, even then I would make it more grandiose than it was. Yeah. Right. Even as a child. Right. Or if I was talking to friends, everything was grander than it had to be. If there was a story, I did this thing where I would start it with a real situation. Yeah. Whatever that real situation was, I would expand it out and I would make it more fantastic, more incredible,
super elaborate,
and just make it so much bigger than it actually was. And it was to make me seem cooler or better or nicer than I actually was, because I wasn't comfortable with who I actually am. Right. And so as time went on, I would continue to use those tools throughout the course of my life, and they would get, you know, more and more complex, and I would build this house of cards up further and further. And I remember like in my teen years, the first time I had a drink, I remember immediately feeling this calm wash over me. I remember immediately going like, this is what everybody else feels like. Yeah. I remember that anxiety, that fear, that worry just drain out of me. And I felt like I could just exist. Right?
Interesting.
But here's the flip side. It just got rid of the emotions, but the way that I was acting was still the same. So when I woke up the next morning, I had told 1,000 more lies. Yeah. And everything had gotten more grandiose because I didn't have this fear of ooh, I shouldn't go too far. Yeah. So I'd wake up with all these regrets. I'd push the limits. And it started out fairly normal and fairly innocuous. What's the word for that?
I don't know that word.
It's neither do I.
I swear to God, as soon as you said it too, I was like, oh no, what does that mean?
Yeah, no. Okay, so it was
innocuous.
It wasn't bad. Okay. You know what I mean? Like everything I started out with was fairly innocent. There we go. Okay. So I would end up later on just having the disease start taking over. Right. So I would move further into demoralization. Right. I would take more liberties. I would cross more moral lines the further into my addiction I got. Right. It would start with like, oh, I'm never going to miss a day at work. Yeah. And then I'd miss a day at work and I'd be like, okay, I'm not going to do more than one a month. And then you skip that out. Or I'm never going to be late and then you're late. Yeah. Or I'm never going to, not be there for my family when they need me. And then you cross those lines. So I'll save you the details from like the teens into my like adult life, and I'll get you towards the end of like where everything kicked off.
Yeah. Sorry. But right before that, how old are you again? I can't remember.
Me?
Yeah. Are we the same age?
Yeah.
You're 93 or 90?
Yeah, 93.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah. So, and you were there for most of this, but when I was 27, I was working at Max and I was bartending, and it was after the pandemic and my drinking really launched up, man. Yeah. There was a lot of like emotions that I wasn't processing during that time frame. Yeah. I was back in Cayman. I was living with my parents. I was in a relationship that I wasn't capable of giving anything into because I was so focused on surviving at this point. Yeah. Right. So over the course of like maybe 4 or 5 months, I had this whole house of cards of who I thought I was that fell down around me. Yeah. And it started with like my grandmother. So I think you remember a little bit, like when we were working together, my grandmother was really sick. We knew that she had like 3 months to live. And during that time frame, I showed up a few times, maybe. My sister flew in, and my mom and my uncles and aunts were all there to take care of her. And because of how much I was drinking, I wasn't focused on any of that. I didn't think I was worth anything. And so I didn't think they'd actually want me there. So instead of going and doing the things that I needed to do, I would drink during the nights, and then I'd be too hungover to go the next day. And I remember my mom like actively like being like, hey, please, just 20 minutes. Just show up for 20 minutes. Yeah. And I would be either too hungover, or I would have something else that I thought I needed to do that day. And she was very conscious of the fact, she's like, this is going to be something you regret. Like, please just make the time. And I was not there for her. So after my grandmother died, I knew that I hadn't done any of the things that I needed to do. I wasn't there for my family in the way they needed me to be. And that part of myself that said like, oh, I'll be there for them if they need me, broke. And I knew that wasn't true anymore. And so, then it went into like I had a relationship with somebody, and that poor girl dealt with so much. I was somebody who wasn't honest in any part of my life. So she'd constantly see me lying and wouldn't understand why I couldn't tell her the truth. Yeah. I was somebody who wasn't faithful at the time. And everything that went wrong in that relationship started with my actions. Right. And so it ended up being just this really unhealthy thing. And she was trying to make it work, but I had already broken the things that are supposed to make a relationship work. Yeah. Like it's supposed to be healthy and honest and supportive. And towards the end of it, there were just none of those things. And so, after my grandmother died, like maybe a month and a half later, I like went out and it was like this big blow up fight. And I had like this wall of text from this girl, and it was just everything under the sun. It was how dishonest I was. And it was giving examples of why I wasn't a good person, or why I wasn't the person that I thought I was. And it was like this long, novel. Right. And
we're thinking about the same person, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I lied about the whole situation.
Yeah.
The perception that you have of that person, completely incorrect.
Interesting.
Completely incorrect.
Yeah.
everything that you saw that was a strange action from her started from a dishonest action that I had.
Yeah, because you're like telling the story very differently from what I guess I understood during that time.
Yeah, because I lied to not only everybody else, but myself.
Yeah.
I couldn't see myself as the bad guy. I couldn't see myself as in the wrong because I believed every single one of the lies I was telling myself. Dang.
You're really taking like, I don't know. I was going to say in a surprise way, and I shouldn't do that. You're taking a lot of responsibility in that relationship, which I think is fantastic.
But it's true
because a lot of people, to the day they die, they're just like, no, like I didn't do anything wrong, or blah blah blah, or
not the case, man.
You're just fully seeing how. You're like it's like you've stepped out of your own body to then assess the situation from an outside perspective, and you're like, oh, I was actually a POS, right?
Terrible.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like I would go out and I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna be home at like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
I'd tell her that, and then walk through the door at like 1:30 and be like, why are you mad? You know what I mean? Drunk to hell, and she'd be like, where were you? And I'm like, I was just chilling at a bar. Oh. Yeah. And it's like, of course you're going to be mad. It's 1:30 in the morning. Where were you? You know, like I get 100%. And it's only through seeing the situation for what it was that I can actually sit down and go like, wow, like I was really at fault.
Yeah.
You know? And so like when I got this like really long message, it was one of the few times that like I read through all of it and I got to the bottom, and I remember being like, wow. Like I can't even argue with any of that.
Yeah.
Like it was just so to the point. Here's an example. Here's why you suck because of it. And I got to the bottom. I'm like, wow, I do suck.
Yeah.
And I
do suck.
It really 100%. Like I got to the bottom. I'm like, I do suck.
I'm the worst.
And then I started thinking about it. I'm like, oh my God. I started thinking about like my grandmother. I started thinking about all my drinking. I'd lost my job because I wasn't working because I couldn't do any of the basic things. My boss called me in and was like, dude, like I called you in here yesterday saying, just please clock out. He's like, this is your last shot. All you got to do is clock out. And I didn't clock out after that conversation, and called me in the office the next day. He was like, bro, we did this yesterday.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sorry. Like, dude, I gave you so many chances. And I'm like, I get it. I get it. I'm crying. You know what I mean? Like, cause like I'd never lost a job before.
Yeah.
I'd never let somebody down so much. And there were so many people in my life I was letting down at the time.
Interesting.
And so when I got this message from the girl that I was dating, I was like, wow, okay. Like this is, I can't deny this. And I remember I was driving down the road and it really hit me how terribly I was feeling. All the time, I felt terrible for letting my family down, my friends down, my coworkers down, my partner down. And I remember just getting to the point where I felt so tired of feeling like that, so tired of letting people down all the time. And it finally became my responsibility. It wasn't anybody else's fault. I was the problem. My actions were the ones, and I finally saw it for the first time. And I remember I was driving by Brown's Esso, and I was coming up, heading towards West Bay Road. And we're going around the airport. And I remember like that exact moment that it clicked. And I was like, this is the moment that I have to quit. And I always knew it was coming. I always knew I was going to have to walk through that door and close it because I knew my behavior was unhealthy somewhere in the back of my mind. And that was the moment I was like, this is it. And I remember going home, having one last hurrah that night, and waking up the next morning, and I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out. And I found, a place where I could go and talk it through with other people who had the same issues. And I sat there and listened and absorbed everything they needed to. And over time, I'm still dealing with everyday life, but now I'm starting to find tools that I need to be able to handle it. And so, from there and through the help of other people who have also gone through this, I was able to slowly but surely build up this like tool chest of ways in which I could make my life better. Cause like you can't just go, okay, I want to change. And then like, what are you going to do? You got to figure it out somehow. And so they gave me this roadmap that I could use, actions I could take to make my life better and be the person that I thought I was that whole time. Right. And it allowed me to be honest, and I don't have to tell stories anymore. And I don't have to be afraid of what other people think of me, because I'm taking the actions I know I need to take to be comfortable with myself. And that ability to conquer my fears that I had over, the course, I'm still doing it to this day. I still find fears that I have to conquer.
Of course, yeah.
But it got to the point where like I conquered like my internal fears, and there's maintenance that I do with that. But it's led me to all these other different avenues in life, man. There's fears that I've faced that I never thought I'd ever have the courage to face, because I started with my addiction, right? Like if you'd asked me 3 years ago if I was ever going to get in the ocean at night, I would have bet you every red cent that I was ever going to make that I was never going to get in that water.
Really?
I would never go in the ocean at night. I was terrified.
Oh.
Terrified. In the back of my mind, Jaws was waiting for me every single second. And when I was younger, I couldn't even go in a pool at night.
That's crazy.
Because I was worried there was a shark in the corner of a pool.
I do remember being a kid and thinking like even pools had sharks, or like lakes, going in a small lake in Ontario or whatever had a shark.
Yeah.
The irrational fears like that. Yeah.
So that irrational fear traveled into my adulthood, man. And when I was about probably a year into, like, after I quit drinking.
Yeah.
And I had a buddy of mine, people had asked me multiple times, I'm a diver, right? Multiple times they're like, hey, do you want to go on a night dive? And I said, no. That's so many times.
I mean, that does look terrifying, to be fair.
Right?
Yeah.
I said
that
no
water's
so many
dark,
times.
dude.
And so my buddy came to me, he's like, hey, do you want to go? I'm going to come pick you up in an old, like, German special forces vehicle. Do you want to go at 3 a.m. out to this dive spot, swim out, go in some dark caves, and then come up as the sun is rising, go get some breakfast? And apparently, if you tell me something in such an interesting way,
yeah,
I'll do anything. Yeah. So he was like, we're going to do something cool. And I went, that does sound cool.
It does.
And the cool kind of outweighs the scary.
Yeah.
And so I did it.
Yeah.
I went in and I did it, and I faced that fear. I was terrified for the first 10 minutes.
No doubt. Yeah.
And then after that, you get acclimated, right?
Yeah.
You get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Right. And so now to this point, I'm comfortable in most situations. I can sit down, I can have conversations about this. I was in the water last week. It was a Wednesday night. It was me and a friend.
Yeah. And
we got in the water. We went into a cave. We shut our lights off, and we sat there and we waited, and we let our eyes adjust to the darkness. Right. This is after we had just come across a shark, by the way. So the one fear that I knew in my head, we had just seen it, and I was like, wow, neat. It was a nurse shark. They're harmless.
Yeah.
But he was chilling in a hole, and I went, neat, passed by him, shut my lights off. And I just sat in this cave and we waited, and it was this alien environment, pure darkness. And you're just weightless, and your eyes start to adjust, and you start to see the light a little bit more, man. And you start to see shapes and things moving, and all of a sudden the darkness isn't so scary.
Yeah.
There's light out there, man. And so it's a pretty good analogy for how I faced a lot of my trials and my fears, right? I thought, when I quit drinking, I was like, what's going to be there for me? How am I going to deal with all of this? And so I went out into the darkness, man, and surprisingly, that's where I found light. That's where I found my happiness.
I just got chills.
That's where I found my ability to be relaxed.
Yeah.
I was able to, and I was more comfortable in that cave than I've ever been anywhere. But I would have never known that if I didn't take that first step and I didn't take that first chance to go out there.
That's awesome. And I think that, man, I love that. There's an album that I love. I like listening to, and it's called, the rapper's, his name is Andy Mineo, and his album is called Uncomfortable. And it's all about basically stepping into that place of, is that a word? Uncomfortability? No, that's not a word.
No,
uncomfortability. I mean, you know what I'm saying, but like you stepping into that uncomfortable place because that is the place that you grow. When you're comfortable, you're not growing. No. And when when you step into that place being uncomfortable, that's when you're going to grow. That's when you're going to learn. That's when you're going to like, you're moving forward. And I love that. And especially that whole analogy and that picture that you just painted is so perfect. It's literally exact, like the story and the picture. It complements each other so well. Dude, you're like a good storyteller, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. I could see why I used to tell a lot.
I had a lot of practice with it before, but here's the thing, man. I used to think that my stories weren't good enough. Yeah. Right? I used to always think like whatever happened, it could be something really cool, man. Yeah. It could be something awesome. And I'm like, that's not good enough. I gotta one up it. Yeah. It couldn't just be like, I went out and, you know, like went into a cave and, you know, I wouldn't have been okay with it being just a nurse shark, something harmless. I would have been like, it was a tiger. Yeah. You know, like it couldn't be something just like calm and easy. And the best part is if somebody pried into it and was like, oh, did that really happen? I'd be like, yeah. Don't ask anybody about it though. Versus now I'm like, I got videos. I can show you. Yeah. You know, I got timestamps. Like,
totally. Don't check in on that though. Yeah.
Don't ask any questions.
Oh, that's wicked, dude. That's amazing,
great, man. You end up being, you end up finding that like all these things that you're afraid of, like it's just afraid because you haven't done them yet. And the second you take that leap, man, it's not that bad. Nothing bad ever really happens. Yeah. You never walk into a room. Like I always used to have this fear of like, if I walked into a room of people that like, I didn't know, like it felt like somebody was going to pants me and be like, ha ha nerd and kick me over. Like I always had this fear that like, I was like, so people were going to hate me, man. But it just nerd. But it was never
talk about irrational fears. Holy.
Like, yeah.
That's really good though. And no, that's true. I think that like a lot of people, their fears are simply because you just like haven't actually done it. You haven't experienced it. And once you do it, you know, you can like, I always try to think to my, like, okay, so for example, when I went skydiving, I'm afraid of heights. Like, I don't like heights. But then my sister one day was like, I'm going skydiving with these people. You should come. And I was like, shit. I was like, because me and her, like, best friends. We're super close. So I was like, well, if you're going to die, I got to die too. Like, I have to go. Ass, why are you making me go skydiving? I hate you. So, like, I'm nervous as ever going up. This is years ago as well. This is like 2015 or 2016 or something like that. So I'm terrified. I'm like, I bought like a Mickey of whiskey or something on the way because I'm like trying to calm the nerves. And then I'm also thinking that I was going to get like motion sickness. Yeah. So I got Gravol too. So I literally popped a bunch of Gravol, washed it down with whiskey. So everyone's kind of like, everyone's got their nerves going. Yeah. I'm like half passed out because this Gravol is fully kicked in on top of the alcohol. So I'm just like coasting. I'm like good to go. But in the back of my head, I'm still like, I'm jumping out of a plane. I'm jumping out of a plane. Why? Why am I doing this? You don't need to do this. This is stupid. And to this day, I remember the second I landed, like I jumped out of the plane, I landed, the second my feet touched the ground, I was instantly like, I need to do that again. Yeah. That was so amazing. And I've always said that is like one of the best feelings that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And I wouldn't have been able to experience that if I let my fear dictate my moves. Yeah. Which would have sucked because I would have missed out on what I consider to be one of the best feelings in the world that I've been able to experience so far. And everyone else would have done it and come back and said how amazing it was. And then I would have felt like shit because I wussed out.
Or worse yet, man, you wouldn't have felt like shit and you would have never known. you would have never known where you could have gone. You would have never known how good that door could have felt, man.
Yeah.
And people do this all the time. I was the number one offender, man. I was so afraid of everything, and I would use alcohol as a way to kind of feel good.
Yeah.
Like that, you're not supposed to just sit down and feel good. Like it comes from doing things, right? And like I once I started like drinking, I wouldn't go out and do anything. It was this barrier in between me and something else because I'm sitting down, I'm already feeling good. Why do I need to go out and try something else? You know? And so I just became lazy. I became complacent, and I just let life happen around me.
Yeah.
I wasn't an active participant. And so it's only now that I can sit in, and I've been doing this thing since the beginning of the year. I'm coming up on 3 years in recovery in July. And I even now I'm like, wow, like I feel like I'm not doing enough new things. And so from the beginning of the year, I was like, once a week, I'm going to do something new. And so whether that was rock climbing with but it doesn't have to be anything wild. Sometimes it is. Yeah. Sometimes it is rock climbing. Sometimes it's
big
just
or small, whatever.
Doing a Lego project for the first time
and sucking at it,
being terrible at it, and have your girlfriend do her whole project and then another one.
Yeah.
And you're still halfway done. Yeah. So, you know, sometimes it's really picking up a guitar and trying to learn how to play.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes it's sitting down with my girlfriend and painting a picture. Mm-hmm. Right. But it doesn't have to be something crazy. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
It just has to be new.
And you might come across something that you have like this talent for that you didn't even know.
Yeah.
Right. You could just literally just do the smallest thing in like what you think would be insignificant and be like, okay, this is my thing this week. Do it. And then be like, that was amazing. Like I really enjoyed that. And then that's like a new thing. You know what I mean? That's really good.
There's a flip side to it too, man. Like it's one of those things where like I start looking for new things. So many people talk about on this island that there's like nothing to do.
Yeah.
So many bars. I can categorically say that's not the case.
Really?
I found so much stuff. I know
that was like one of the biggest things I always said. I was like, this island is so boring.
If you think it's boring, you're not looking.
Yeah, 100%.
There's 100%. There's so many things out there that you can do. And so like there's one, the flip side of like, I started looking for things actively.
Yeah.
And then two, it gets to the end of the week and I'm like, wow, I haven't really done anything new. I'm like, oh God. And then I start racking my brain, and you'll be surprised how many times you've done something in the week you didn't even realize was the first time you've done something.
Yeah.
And so you're looking for those new experiences now. And it's almost like it retrains your brain where you're not focusing on the monotonous day-to-day life. You're starting to look at what have I done this week that is new? And you'd be surprised how many times there's a new experience that you just didn't register.
Yeah, I like that. I had a similar, so I understand what you're saying, because I had last year in March, I had someone come visit me, and she was very much had that same kind of mindset. Like, you know, she was here for a week, and we called it like the week of firsts, and it was just breaking out of because last March, I was in a nasty place, nasty place. I can't even believe she and had a good week, because I was like such a depressing little shit. But she wanted to make a point of like showing me new things, you know, showing the good in things. Yeah. And, you know, by the end of the week, I'm pointing out all these random things that we're doing that I've never done before. And I lived on this island for years, and it's like, I've never done this. We're just doing it. And it was like you said, like it was even down to like the smallest thing that doesn't really matter, but in my head, you're triggered and you're like, this has never happened before. Mm-hmm. Like I remember one of the things for me, like I said, very insignificant. It wasn't even, we didn't really even technically do anything new, but we were driving, you know where the airport is. And then you have the lights right there where the roost is.
Yeah.
Those lights.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you were to go like up towards West Bay, that's where like over the plane goes, right?
Yeah.
So we were driving down this road at the exact moment the plane was coming down. And so it was like the plane was directly over our car. And I remember thinking, well, first of all, that's really loud. But like, also like, I was like, that's never happened before. Like I've always seen it and I've always been like farther away from it maybe, but I've never driven down the road and had the plane directly over top of me. And it's close because it's literally at the beginning of the runway, right? Yeah. And like I said, so insignificant, but my brain had started to be trained in noticing these new things, which also can give you like a really good appreciation for life too. You know what I mean?
Life is one of those things where like you experience what you train yourself to experience. If you're constantly training yourself to focus on the negative, you're only ever going to see the negative. If like, and I still get sucked into this because like, while I try and work on my thought patterns being more positive, there are weeks, sometimes even months where like I focus on just the negative things. Like I'm not feeling well, or I'm not progressing in my career, or, whatever it is, sometimes you just get stuck in that loop, man. And it's okay to get stuck in that loop, but you need to identify that you're stuck in it. And one of the best parts about being in recovery for me is that I have this great opportunity to sit down in front of other people. And if I don't recognize it, somebody else will recognize it and go like, hey, no, think about it this way. Yeah. And I get to have this back and forth with other people, other minds. And sometimes somebody's just talking about something that's affecting them. And I go, oh my God, man, I do that too. I don't even realize I'm doing it. And so you start to break these patterns just because you have all these people around you that are like, we're all just trying to figure it out. We're all just trying to focus on, what allows us to live like a positive, happy, honest life. Yeah. Right. And I'm so fortunate that I get to one, share these experiences with people, but two, that I get to train my brain to see the ones that are just already there. Yeah. Right. And stop myself from falling down this rabbit hole of negative emotion, because it's, most of it's not real. Yeah. Most of it's just my perceived, slights. Like, like I jump immediately to 10 billion conclusions. My mind works 1,000 miles a minute. Yeah. Somebody who doesn't respond to a text, I'm like, they hate me. Yeah. Immediately.
I still struggle with that all the time. Yeah. Like, you don't, they read your text, but they don't reply right away. And you're like, why? What's going through your head,
I'll give you a perfect example of one. And this is, I feel silly all the time when I do it, but one of my, my closest friends, right? And I got to be careful with how much I say on this. One of my closest friends, we had some stuff we were going to discuss at the beginning of the year. Okay. And I sent her a message on Instagram and I didn't get a response. And so about a week goes by and I'm like, oh, this is strange. And I sent her another message and still nothing. And so I waited a couple of weeks and I'm like, okay. And I sent her another message, nothing. And I'm like, what have I done? I'm like, I've done something. Yeah. Like I've done something to offend her. I don't know what it was. And I realized I hadn't sent a message on her birthday. It was December 25th. Yeah. And like my mom's is the 24th, and Christmas for me, I've got a big Caymanian family. Like it's a lot. So I just wasn't thinking. And so I'm like, man, like it wasn't that. And I tried to call her and apologize for it and nothing. And so I'm like, wow, okay. And I just, for months, right? I was like, okay, at some point, like she'll come back to me. Months go by, nothing. And then I finally get a text that says like, hey, are you free to talk? It came in on my WhatsApp. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey, what? I just want to start with, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to miss your birthday. I really wanted, I was calling you. I was going to try and send some stuff towards you. I don't know what your address is. And I'm just like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that to you. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, what? I'm like, no, I missed your birthday. And she was like, no. She's like, whatever. Like, that's no big deal. Catch the next one. It's fine. Like, don't worry about it. And there was so much stuff that had happened in her life. Yeah. And there were a lot of things, like I can't say what it was, but there was a lot of things that had happened to her, really positive, amazing things, but she just couldn't say anything about them for a period of time.
Yeah.
And so she didn't want to call me. She didn't want to talk to me because she thought she'd let it slip.
Yeah.
And better yet, she didn't get any of my messages on Instagram because she had deleted it.
Oh, so she just deleted the app. She's not even getting notifications.
No. And so I'm sitting there racking my brain, I'm freaking out.
I'd probably still be mad at that. I'd be like, dude, why did you delete it? Why did you like not give me a heads up? We're like best friends.
It's all something that I made up in my head.
Yeah.
It's all something I made up in my head. And I'd worked on for months. I was just felt so bad.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, I didn't try to figure out a different way to contact her. I didn't attack it from a different angle.
Yeah.
But there's so much in my life that's like that, where like 99% of my problems are stuff that's happening up here.
Yeah.
And just me not realizing that it's a me thing.
Yeah. I was talking to someone recently, similar situation where they went to like a work party and everyone, was having drinks and stuff. And this person basically felt like they may have overshared at their work party and may have been a little bit just too much for a staff or a work party, right?
Yeah.
And so we're talking on the phone and this person has severe anxiety over this because they're like, I'm going to go to work the next day. What are they going to say to me? Like, what are they going to do? Yeah. Blah, blah, blah. Like totally freaking out.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're not back to work until Monday. Why are you stressed out right now? I was like, your stress now has nothing to do with your emotions on Monday. Yeah. You can stress out now and then you're going to continue to stress out on Sunday and then you can continue to stress out on Monday and just like ruin your whole weekend.
Yeah.
Or don't just like, don't forget about it, but like just learn to like control that side and just be like, nothing that I do now is going to affect Monday. So just enjoy yourself now, enjoy yourself Sunday, and on Monday you can face that and see what happens.
Yeah.
And yeah, it might suck. Maybe they're going to come up to you and be like, probably shouldn't have said those things. Maybe since it was a work party and everyone's drinking, they don't even remember.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Maybe they don't care. You've caused yourself a whole weekend of anxiety and stress for literally nothing.
Yeah. And here's the rub for a lot of people. Everybody thinks because it's something they've done that people are focusing in on it. Nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
Everybody's so focused on themselves that they're never going to remember or register. They're only ever thinking about the things they're saying because that's the only people they care about. Yeah. And if somebody does
that's so true.
care enough about what somebody else is saying, then they don't care about the negative things. That's somebody who cares altruistically and wants to help. So the person who remembers is not the person who's going to, make you feel bad about it. The person who remembers is going to be the person who's like, hey, are you doing all right? Like, you know what I mean? Like everybody
that's really good advice
so heavily on it. And I've struggled with both depression and anxiety my whole life, man. Depression for me, and this is how I categorize, it's different for everybody. But depression for me is the stuff that I dwell on that has happened in my past. And anxiety is the things that I'm worried about that have yet to come.
Okay.
And the only way I can prevent myself from feeling both of those things is staying in the present. If it's something that's happened in my past, I have to let it go. Either I take an action and I go and make amends with somebody who I wronged.
Yeah.
And I try and make it right. Because even if they don't let me make it right, I've done everything I can to try and make it right with them.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do.
Yeah.
Right. And if it's something that's coming in the future and I'm worried about it, there's still an action you can take.
Yeah.
Right. Like if I'm worried about, a project that's coming on Monday, right? And it's a week before and I haven't done anything with it, I will go, okay, I need to do this. Let me do this. Mm-hmm. And I'll set a time for it. Whether it's the next day, and I have to be honest with myself enough and trust myself enough to go, that's when I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I can't keep postponing it. And so as long as I sit down and I do what I say I'm going to do when I say I'm going to do it, and I'm honest with me, then it alleviates the anxiety. And I can go, okay, it's going to happen then. I don't have to worry about it now. And then I can relax.
Yeah.
But there has to be intention behind it.
Yeah.
Can't just tell yourself relax.
Well, I think that's also really good with like, you're building you're building a discipline as well, where, you know, you put your schedule in, and because you've now become more of a disciplined, scheduled person, that you can actually trust yourself to be like, yeah, like I already put it there. It's going to be done. So subconsciously your brain is at ease, because even like your brain trusts you, which is crazy. Cause I feel like there's so many times where, like, for me, like when I know I'm going to do something, it's done. Like I'm just always that kind of person where, like, when I say yes, when I make that conscious, like I'm doing this and this is when I'm doing it, it's happening. Yeah. But there are some things that happen there are some times where I don't do that. And so I end up freaking out. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a chronic procrastinator.
Yeah.
My whole life, right? But I have to know these things about myself, right? Yeah. I had to figure out what my character defects were in order to counteract them. I knew I was lazy, so then I had to be proactive. You have to categorize and figure out what all these things are, the things that cause you the most stress, the things that are affecting your life, so that you can take action to fix them. The things that torment you when you go to sleep, you can only do something about it if you identify specifically what they are. And that's a lot of what I did in recovery, was identifying those character defects and doing everything I need to do on a daily basis to counteract them.
Yeah. How did you like adjust to that? Like when you go from not having a disciplined, scheduled lifestyle to now becoming this person of routine and whatnot, like what clicks in your brain to make that happen? Like
a bunch of little things. Yeah. It didn't start like this, and it wasn't immediate. It took time. There were little things that I had to learn each and every day. Yeah. But I had to be patient with myself. There are times where I fall out of routine. There are times where I don't, I'm not as effective as I need to. I don't wake up as early as I'd like to. But the only way you can counteract those things is by identifying them, right? Yeah. And so when I was working on the way to get here, right? And I still don't think this is a destination, right? I can continuously get better and better and better, right? Even if it's just by little increments each day, right? Yeah. And that's all it was. It was just, okay, I'm going to wake up at 7 every day. Yeah. That's it. Doesn't matter how the rest of the day goes. As long as I go in and do whatever my version of my best is, then I give it 110%. If somebody asks me to do something, I do it. Yeah. If, I have a time limit for something, I get it done within there. Yeah. And so like it's little increments each day. So one day it's like I wake up at 7, maybe a couple of days later I go, okay, maybe I'm waking up at, 6:30 and getting like a coffee, right? And then eventually it's like I'm waking up at 5:30 and I'm going to the gym and I'm getting coffee but it's all increments, right? Okay. And you do it at a pace. You don't just wake up one morning and you're like, I'm going to go to the gym. I don't smoke anymore. I don't, you know what I mean? Yeah. Because your body's not going to know what to do with all of that. Yeah. And you're setting yourself up for failure. Yeah. It has to be small increments.
That's really wise. I like that. I saw actually a photo that resembled that same thing recently, where it was like, it was like a photo of like a little man, and then there's 2 sets of stairs, and both stairs go to the exact same height. But one on the left side, those stairs were like giant, like bigger than him, which he would have to physically climb up. And the other one are like little tiny stairs. Yeah. Both leads to the same place. What makes more sense? What's easier? What's actually gonna like? What's the likelihood of you accomplishing one versus the other? You know what I mean? What do you think? If you had to look at, again, step out of your life, look at your life from A to B. If you knew that someone else was going through very similar things, emotions that you went through, what would be, if you had one bit of advice or one thing that you could say to someone that went through, that could be going through the same thing, something that maybe really inspired you or helped you, like what would you say to that person?
The only way I'll know how to answer that is by thinking what would I tell my younger self? Right. And the number one thing I would probably go back and say to the younger version of me is just like, it's okay, man. Like, you don't have to be anything for anybody.
Yeah.
There's so much pressure we put on ourselves on a daily basis to be great, to be rich, to be perfect, to be beautiful, to be all these different things. And the pressure that guy was under to be all those things meant he was too crippled to do any of them. And so the thing I'd say to him is just like, it's okay, man. Just take a second. First things first.
Yeah.
Figure out what that biggest challenge is that you need to handle. For me, it was alcoholism.
Yeah.
And so that was the hurdle. And I focused on that hurdle. And, you know, it's something I still work on.
Yeah.
It's not done. It's not a destination. But once I handled that big chunk, then I worked on the other things. And it's funny how once you're working on yourself, how many things tend to fall into place. You know, once I got my alcoholism under control, I started getting better jobs. And I started, you know, I found a girl that was fantastic. But the only reason I have the relationship I do now is because I did the work on myself over the course of a year.
Yeah.
To be honest with me, and to be, you know, faithful, and to trust that I care more about her than I am focused on like me. Right. Mm. I want to make sure she's happy. I consider it an honor to be somebody's partner and to be in a position where I can be of service to them. Yeah. And if I'm focused on what I can do for that person, then I'm not focused on what I'm not receiving. Yeah. I'm not focused on what I don't have. I'm focused on what can I give them.
I like that.
And that makes me happy, man.
Yeah.
Because then it doesn't matter what's happening around me. And it's funny when you're focused on giving other people stuff, they tend to return the favor. Yeah. They tend to focus on figuring out ways to make you happy. And then all of a sudden it's not your responsibility anymore. Yeah. And if you're happy and you're content within yourself, that's it.
Yeah. Man, I got to tell you, like, even now in doing this interview in the moment, like, even like I feel very encouraged just listening to you, which I love, because it makes me like happy, because I'm thinking that, like, well, this episode is probably going to be fantastic. I mean, which is great, but like at the same time, I'm like, dude, I am physically encouraged in this moment listening to you talk. So there's got to be people out there that are going to hear it, that are also going to find that encouragement.
I hope so.
Yeah.
And that's, at the end of the day, man, like, happiness only comes from like truly one place. And it's finding out where you can be of service. It starts with being of service to yourself and finding what your issues are, and you know, finding a program or something that specifically helps you work on that. Yeah. For me, finding a place where I could meet with like-minded people to work on my alcoholism was instrumental. That's the only way I'm able to sit here and do this, right? Yeah. And speak confidently and have these experiences, is because somebody else took the time to help me with mine, and because I'm taking the time to help other people with their issues as well, right? So I'm hoping somebody gets inspired. Yeah. But it's a journey of a single step, man. You find whatever that place is that's going to help you with the issue that you have. And you go and you listen. Yeah. And you take whatever advice that those people give you and you run with it. And one day you just do that literally one step at a time, man. One foot in front of the other, day by day. Yeah. And all of a sudden you're going to look up one day and you're going to realize you're in a completely different space with completely different level of operation, with a completely different partner, and you're going to be happy. But happiness is not something that you stay at, right? I like to think of like happiness and joy as like the peaks, and there's always going to be peaks and valleys in life, right? The objective is to remain content, right? Where like you're content, you're grateful for everything that you have. It doesn't have to make you joyous, doesn't have to make you sad, and over time, if you just focus on being content, those peaks and valleys are little wobbles. Sometimes something crazy good happens. Sometimes something really bad happens. But if you just stay level.
Yeah. Contentment is huge, dude. Contentment can get you through anything. just being okay with your situation, okay with what you have, who you are. It's so key to living a happy life.
It takes training though.
Yeah.
You have to train your brain to sit down and like for me, I have to have a list. If I'm not actively looking at it, my brain automatically jumps to like what I don't have, right? It's easy for me to sit here and talk about these things now that I've done two and a bit years of work on it. We're coming up on 3. I keep wanting to say 3, but it's not.
Yeah.
We're coming up on it.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at it now and go, hey, this is what it is, right? But it's hard in the moment when you're not used to working on being grateful for things. And so you have to make a conscious effort. It needs to be how you start your day. You got to wake up. And for me, I had a list of 10 things, right? And then there's just, I have a list of 10 things that I always focus on. It's usually like, family and the people around me that I'm grateful for. But then I always try and add one as well in the morning. And it could be something that's like that happened the previous day. But I always focus on the main ones that keep me grounded.
Yeah.
And then, you add a little extra one. Like I'm grateful today that I get to sit down with a friend who I haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
And I get to talk to you about a little bit of my journey. And I'm grateful that potentially somebody could hear this and just one small nugget of information plants a seed.
Yeah.
I don't expect anybody to hear this and go like, amazing. I'm getting up and I'm going to put my jacket on and I'm walking out the door. That guy is, boy, do I respect his opinion.
It very well could be a thing though. Yeah. You never know, right? You've been very transparent and honest with, the things that you've went through and the emotions and the thought processes that went on, and people appreciate that. People, I know, like when I first heard when I was a lot younger and I first heard people being that transparent and honest with their story, it's empowering. Yeah. And it's amazing because you're like, they're honest with themselves and everyone else, I can do this too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like I said before in the previous episode, it's just ripple effects. You tell a story that encourages someone, they tell their story, encourages someone, and just these constant ripple effects. Man, that would have been a cool name for the podcast. Ripple effects. Dude,
it's not bad, man.
That's kind of fire.
It's not bad.
No, it's repurposed. Wait. It could be a future show, Ripple Effects. Trademark that right now. Boom, copyright, unofficial. That's a thing.
There was actually something that I came up with when I was younger that like it was, I always thought of like actions as like dropping a pebble in a pond.
Yeah.
And so like you drop a pebble in a pond and then you have these ripples that go out and affects everything around it. And so I always thought it was like this cool idea of like, may your actions be the waves that crash upon the shores of the ones you love.
Deep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just create a whole boom. But I never had anything to do with it. Ripple effect.
Ripple effect.
Yeah.
It's also the name of a game studio, so I don't know if I could use that, but still.
Call them and be like, hey, I own this now. And then hand them like $5. See what's up.
It's a really big game studio, so that's not going to happen.
They're not going to change up their brand just because you asked?
Yeah, they're the ones that made Battlefield, so...
Yeah. Okay, all right. Well,
Ripple effects, that's
fair enough.
They've got a pretty stern footing down
pretty
there.
Established.
Yeah. Well, anyways, man, honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. It means a lot to me. I'm sure it's going to mean a lot to a lot of people that you were sharing your story. And I'm super happy we got to do this. This was nice. This was cool.
It means a lot to me. Thank you so much for having me to come and do this. And I feel like it's kind of cathartic to have this conversation with you in particular as well, man, because like we worked together. You were there when I was like really kind of in the throes of it, man. So like being able to have this conversation with you and kind of not only admit kind of my faults in a lot of those ones, but be comfortable that those faults happened.
Yeah.
I think it kind of, it feels good to just have that conversation with you, man. So I appreciate it.
100%. This is great, dude. Thank you. And thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing, hopefully, liking the video and all that. If you are someone that would like to share your story, please reach out. 100% someone wants to hear your story. There is someone that needs to hear your story. Please reach out, email us at xmproductions@outlook.com. Just do it. Shut it down from the Cayman Islands. So yeah, thank you very much.
Still light out, man. We'll go hit that beach.
Yes, dude. I do want to go to the beach like at least once a day. Probably not today, actually. So maybe not. But I did go to the beach yesterday. So I need to soak that in.
Nice, man. I know a cave you can visit.
Nope. You know what? I'm really happy for you, but I'm not doing that.
All right. We'll get you there one day.